Start off here with a couple of speakers that have something very compelling I think you all will be interested in hearing. So we're going to have Rihanna Eldon and Brian Steiner.
Yes,
Please
sir.
proceed. You're cleared hot.
Awesome. Thank you for hearing us today. My name is Rihanna Eldon, and we've been studying this one small part of election integrity for since February. What we're bringing you today is the fact that none of the machines in Arizona in 2020 were certified to be used. That would mean that any vote tabulated on any of that equipment could not be considered to be a legal vote. You may wonder why I say that. Well, there are two labs that were purported to be accredited to certify the machines in Arizona. These labs are called ProV&V and SLI Compliance. And I'm going to show you the certifications. I'm just going to jump right in to show you why I even can say what I just said. So ProV&V, this is a certificate of accreditation for ProV&V lab. As any of you know who have done any kind of purchase contract, there are very important parts to a contract. Signatures. It's got to be the right person to sign. Dates, very important. So you can see that this certificate was issued February 24th of 2015, and it expired on February 24th of 2017. Therefore, this lab was not accredited to certify any Arizona machine for the 2020 elections. We can look at the next issued certificate for this laboratory, and we can note that by the very way that the commission tried to cover up the fact that there was not a certificate of accreditation current points further to their guilt. I can go into very much detail on this, but I'm going to stick to the high level for now. We're going to move on to the second lab just to show you once again that the only other lab that could have been accredited to do the job for 2020 did not do so. So this lab, this SLI Compliance, you can see the issue date in the lower right corner, 2018, January 10th. These accreditation certificates, to be in compliance, they must be reissued, reapplied for, have a vetting package that vets every part of the company, not just the technical, every 2 years. You can see that this one is dated 3-year delta. So to be in compliance, this lab should have, in December of 2019, have reapplied to be accredited. 30 days prior to the expiration, which would have been January 10th of 2020, this lab should have reapplied. They did not. And the very fact that this certificate was not in existence until last December. So last December, somebody started making a stink about there not being a certificate for SLI. And it showed up all of a sudden with this 3-year delta, which is not in compliance. And if we move to the next one, we can see that for this laboratory, once again, it must have been that they knew, because here they then redated. You can see that they issued it in February of 2021 after much attention was focused on these laboratories and the fact that they were not accredited. So that's the high level there. We can also go to the other important part of contracts on each of these certificates. There are requirements for accreditation. You don't just give somebody an accreditation because you've known them in the past. You must vet them every 2 years in this case. So the requirements are very, very detailed, and they are detailed within the HAVA Act, the Help America Vote Act of 2002. And they're also detailed within a manual that the Election Assistance Commission has, and this manual details very clearly, there are not gray areas there as to all of the things that these labs must do to be accredited. One of the things is that they must be signed by the appropriate person. Anyone, once again, who's purchased or sold a home knows that I can't sell your home. I would not be able to sign that contract to sell a home if it wasn't my home to sell. So signatures on contracts are very important. In the cases of these certificates, they must be signed pursuant to the compliance regulations by the chair of the commission. So let's go backwards through these certificates again and see this one was signed by the executive director. Same with this one. Same with this one. And there we go, the acting executive director. Historical norms for these accreditation issuances will show that this wasn't the case in the past. So there's standard operating procedures, so to speak, for how these things are supposed to be done. They were not done. If we just had one thing wrong with these certificates, that would be a problem. Our election machines were designated critical infrastructure. Contractors that work for the federal government are known, even among themselves in the industries, that they have a huge and higher need to be above board, to be vetted, to be documented. Every aspect of a government contractor that is working with critical infrastructure, it is extremely important that every I be dotted and every T crossed. And we have multiple problems here. And the fact that you look at then 2020 elections and you can see that the labs were not accredited, we can then go back to the first slide that we had, and I'll tie it all together and then take some questions. The HAVA Act is the federal law, and it was in 2002 in response to the Hanging Chads from 2000. And the HAVA Act is the one who made all of these requirements necessary for these laboratories. They were trying to make having machines be the safest possible. States did not have to comply with this federal act, but Arizona chose to. And when Arizona chose to, Arizona codified it into law. And we can read this law, it's on the screen. Machines or devices used at any election for federal, state, or county offices may only be certified for use in this state and may only be used in this state if they comply with the Help America Vote Act of 2002 and if those machines or devices have been tested and approved by a laboratory that is accredited pursuant to the Help America Vote Act of 2002. Now, my subject matter expertise, aside from studying this issue, is contracts and language in contracts. This is imperative language in this law. This was not optional. May only be used if. Therefore, every machine used for the 2020 election was not in pursuant to this law. I'll leave it there and take questions.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Fitchum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Or Mr. Chairman, sorry. Madam, I got a little ahead of myself.
Get a haircut, okay? I'll get a haircut.
Madam, so it occurs to me that if the certification wasn't done in a timely manner, the likelihood that the lab did not inspect the equipment or the software is also probably not done in a timely manner. Do you have any documentation or source material that would indicate that it was?
What I have to give you context on that, the lab being accredited is what gives them the right to inspect those machines, to call them certified, okay? And the certificates for the machines, we did go through and we have all of those certificates that were issued by these labs. So the machine certifications exist, if that makes sense. The pieces of paper that show that that machine was quote unquote certified. But then you have to ask, what does certified mean? Was it certified pursuant to this law? Was the lab accredited to even be doing this?
Right.
The concern then is not whether or not, in my mind, whether or not they did it or not in a timely manner. The concern is that some of the vetting parameters for these labs that was not done were that they must submit things that were not submitted, such as conflict of interest policy, company annual report, names of board of directors for current and previous years, audited financials, major shareholders, and they must submit all of this information and their insurance bond, by the way, which is also extremely important for liability and for working as a contractor. So I didn't answer your question directly because I don't, it appears that the certifications were given within a timely fashion.
Okay, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So, Madam, I guess the other side of that question is, and if you don't have an answer to this, that's fine. It leaves an open question for us to further explore. If the machines were certified under a certain set of parameters, it follows then the moment you change those parameters, you have now created an environment where they need to be recertified. Do you know whether or not that is part of the certification regimen?
The certification regimen does include a technical aspect of the certification. We focused more on the detail of the contract having to do with it, and so whether or not down to the weeds they were up on all of that and did all of that, I would not be able to say.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Fitch, in Maricopa County, they use Dominion machines. Which one do they use here? What's the name of that company?
Here in Pima County, I believe they use ES&S.
Say again?
ES&S is what I believe they use here.
Ma'am, let me ask you a question. So you had mentioned conflict of interest. So let's just say a former employee of ES&S or Dominion voting equipment went to work for one of these two labs. Would you consider that a conflict of interest?
I would, personally, yes.
You know, I have some friends in law enforcement, and they tell me when they have to calibrate their speed radar, if it's not calibrated and they go out and cite somebody and it gets questioned, if the thing's not certified and calibrated, then therefore that evidence is inadmissible even in a speeding ticket. So once again, what we have here is the same type of principle. If we have no equipment that's supposed to be certified, then even those results are uncertifiable.
Yes, that is correct.
Now, in your research on that ARS 1644-2B, did you see anything in there that actually had any standards of enforcement?
We did. Brian, I'll let you take that.
So the best that we could find on that would be ARS 16-452C, which holds it to be a Class 2 misdemeanor regarding anything regarding the elections. But the point that I would like to bring up is that you basically have companies, laboratories that are doing government work without a legal contract. We don't allow that in any other, whether you're building a road or whether you're doing a gaming device for slot machines or stuff like that. So we are building roads and doing slot machines at a much higher standard than we are with our voice and our vote. So that was the only statute that I could find, that we could find, that would be a violation.
Maybe the Government
federal
Elections Committee Chair?
I
Go ahead.
have a comment, if
Yeah.
I might. Thank you, and thank you for looking at this and bringing this to our attention. And I'm perusing 16-442, the rest of it, and it's permissive to the Secretary of State. It's not shall, it's may. The Secretary of State may decertify if she finds that it's not accredited. It's not that she shall decertify. So here we have our current Secretary of State during the 2020 election had the opportunity to decertify these and chose not to. So if we're looking to change anything in this, I would think that we would want to make this prohibitive, that she can have that kind of discretion to ignore the statutes that she's to create criteria. If I'm reading this correctly, that she's to create criteria for a situation to decertify, but it says that she may decertify, and we obviously see that she chose not to do that. And that's where politics comes in. When we allow for the discretion that we've allowed, I would recommend, not only do we want to look at what kind of teeth do we put in, but you can't use teeth when it's permissive and discretionary. So we have to change a few things on this. And let me follow up with that, is where do you recommend, if you wouldn't mind repeating your credentials, and then where would you tell us to go from here at this point? With that in mind, that it doesn't seem like she perhaps broke the law, that she had that discretion, what do you recommend that we do going from here?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Once again, my name is Rihanna Eldon, and I don't have any particular credentials. Just in my life work, I've worked in escrow and title, so real estate contracts, and have just studied this issue very in depth for close to a year now. In studying it, I would say that given the fact that HAVA Act was put in place and then Arizona chose to abide by that, those were things that were put in place when machines are used. It seems like what we don't have right now is an election by the people. It seems like what we have is a chain of custody that's broken when the ballots are inside a box that nobody can see into, and that we don't know if these laboratories or, we have experts. We don't have an election by the people. We have an election that must be talked about in this way for hours upon hours by experts. The other point that I would like to make is, in studying this, we had that top level due diligence that was supposed to be done at the federal level and obeyed at the state level. The only other layer that was in place was the Equipment Certification Advisory Committee. Now that committee, wonderful people, I've read all the minutes for those meetings. And they then at the state level look and say, are these machines good to be used? If there's a new build, a new software build, because that happens, right? And each new build, each new change has to be certified again. And this committee, in every single meeting, and I'm not blaming them, it's just a standard operating procedure. Who do they meet with? The machine manufacturers. And they ask them questions, and they get assurances that everything's fine and that everything's certified. So I don't find that another level of due diligence for this most important critical infrastructure and for our votes. And I find that the ball was dropped there, intentionally or not. It doesn't seem to be that the process is set up to really protect the machines, the people, the votes, and the whole process.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Members, any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, both of you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.